Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, July 19th, 3:30 p.m., and this is the City of New Ulm Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan Annual Informational Public Meeting. We're at New Ulm City Hall in the City Council chambers. I'm Joe Sad, I'm City Engineer for the City of New Ulm. I'll be presenting today. Agenda today is we'll provide an introduction and background of our stormwater program, give an update on our 2022 items, and we'll look at what's new for 2022 and what we can expect in the coming years. I will touch on pet waste, illicit discharge, and salt use. We'll read any written comments, and we'll receive any oral statements and questions from audience members. So what is a SWIP? A SWIP is short for a Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. SWIP identifies potential sources of pollutants, describes practices to reduce those pollutants, and ensure compliance with our permit terms. So permit, the City of New Ulm has a MS4 permit, or a Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System permit. We originally received our permit in 2007, and our current permit went into effect November 16th in 2020, issued by the MPCA. So each permit renewal cycle, we have to submit to the MPCA for review, and we submitted our new permit application to the MPCA on April 5th of 2021, and we received approval by the MPCA on August 6th. Those new permit terms and requirements required us to update our stormwater ordinance that was originally adopted in 2008, and we ratified those changes to the ordinance in July of this year. So working together, the permit and our stormwater ordinance guide city staff to keep pollutants out of the Cottonwood and Minnesota rivers as our governments of the state in New Ulm. So how exactly do we do that? So we have what are called best management practices. There's two different kinds of best management practices. We have structural BMPs and non-structural BMPs. Structural BMPs are things such as rain barrels or stormwater retention ponds. Non-structural BMPs include practices that we follow, such as bringing yard waste to a compost site, utilizing proper salt application techniques, and disposing of pet waste appropriately. So we have a number of minimum control measures, or MCMs, to prevent stormwater pollution, and we have 6 MCMs outlined in our stormwater permit. Those MCMs are public education and outreach, public participation and involvement, illicit discharge elimination, construction runoff control, post-construction management, and pollution control and housekeeping. I'll go through those MCMs a little bit more in depth. So MCM number 1 is public education and outreach. The meeting here today is an item to help us comply with that permit term with our annual meeting. Other items include mailings that we do throughout the year. We have a number of utility bill stuffers that are included with the utility bill that touch on illicit discharge, pet waste, and we will send one out this fall that touches on proper salt usage. Education of our staff, our city staff training. The field staff is trained on illicit discharge detection and elimination. City crews use best practices for site erosion and sediment control, and our snow plowing staff recently took some smart salt training for the plow drivers. More education outreach with our South Central Stormwater Group, other municipalities that have MS4 permits. We get together and share ideas, best practices. We also have an annual public involvement activity too to do some additional public outreach. So public participation and involvement is MCM number 2. So a few times a year we solicit public input on our stormwater pollution prevention plans, such as the annual meeting here today. We make our stormwater pollution prevention plan documents available on the city website. 2021 we had 400 website hits on our stormwater page. We distribute educational materials with people getting building permits as well. Additional community involvement includes our annual stormwater activity, and I'll touch on that a little bit later in the presentation as well. But last year, our involvement activity was held at Herman Heights Park, where we discussed rain gardens, what rain gardens do, and also did some rain garden cleanup to remove debris that's collected in those rain gardens. So MCM number 3 is illicit discharge elimination. So MCM 3 is working within our plan to detect and eliminate illicit discharge to our storm sewer system, which ultimately drains to the Cottonwood and Minnesota rivers. So we educate city and PUC staff. We want our staff members to be good role models for the citizens of New Ulm, and we incorporate illicit discharge investigation into everyday activities. In 2021, we had 22 complaints that were received to our office, 4 of those from the public, and 19 of them were from city staff. Those complaints resulted in 22 verbal warnings and 1 written notice to the offenders. Other items for illicit discharge elimination is proper salt storage when it comes to de-icing activities. And we update our storm sewer mapping and GIS mapping with likely areas where we anticipate illicit discharge. And then as well with that, we have updated our identification and enforcement procedures to be in compliance with our MS4 permit. That brings us to MCM number 4, construction site runoff control. So we use the stormwater ordinance to really regulate our pollutants leaving construction sites during their operations. We have 3 city staff members that are trained and certified by the MPCA for construction site inspections, and in turn those individuals train other city staff, so kind of a train-the-trainer sort of activity that's conducted each year. Staff training is conducted either, we alternate between in-person emails and things of that nature to make sure staff is up to date on their training. Way to track our construction sites is we issue stormwater permits. So permits are needed with any land disturbing activities over 1,000 square feet. And those would be small site permits, and then large site permits are any sites that disturb over 1 acre of soil. 2021, we had 22 total permits, and from those 22 permits, that generated 289 site inspections. 3 of those permits were large site, 19 of them were small site. That is 3 more permits than we had in 2020. And we have had fairly good contractor compliance with those permits. We had 23 enforcement actions. 22 of those were just verbal warnings or corrections that were needed with 1 written notice for correction. MCM number 5 is post-construction management. So this MCM addresses stormwater runoff from developed and redevelopment projects. So we have flyers for contractors and developers with rules and regulations they need to comply with. We have updated the ordinance and city stormwater manual to comply with the new standards issued by the MPCA permit. And we continue to update the city's stormwater BMP database. So as projects are finished, we add those items into our database, and also is tracked through our MCM reporting that we do each year with the MPCA as well. And finally, MCM number 6 is pollution prevention. Goal of all of this is to reduce and prevent pollutants from entering the Minnesota and Cottonwood rivers. Each year, we inspect our city storm sewer outfalls and stormwater ponds. We do this to ensure that the BMPs are working properly and if they need any maintenance. Any construction operations use the appropriate BMPs. We have revised our snow and ice control policy that the city street department follows for their snow removal activities. Touching again on the smart salt training for snow removal staff, all city street department plow drivers have attended the training within the past year. We have mapping updates for pollutants and modeling updates as well with our storm sewer GIS infrastructure. Slide here just shows some basic stormwater infrastructure. We have a couple outfalls in the top two pictures, a couple stormwater ponds on the bottom two pictures. So what changed in 2021? Not much other than the city MS4 permit being renewed. So with the permit renewal from 2021, we had 1 calendar year to make sure we were in compliance with the new permit requirements. So those new MS4 permit requirements that we've taken care of in 2022 to date are the ordinance update. The ordinance update that we needed to address was concerning salt storage, and that really, at this point in time, only pertains to city for our bulk salt storage that we use for snow and ice removal in the winter. Along with that, we updated our snow and ice control policy and the stormwater manual, so all those documents are up to date with the current requirements. So what to expect in 2022 and beyond? We will continue our public educational opportunities to educate the public on illicit discharge, pet waste disposal, and proper salt applications for ice control. We'll look forward to using KNUJ and utility bill stuffers to help with that, along with our social media that the city has. For MCM number 2, we added items, as previously stated, with our utility bill stuffers. We'll use the public involvement activity as well, rain barrel event, rain garden cleaning. I anticipate that we'll kind of have the same setup that we did last year up at Herman Heights Park. It was well received and attended. MCM number 3 touched on the ordinance update for salt storage, and we'll continue to update our storm sewer mapping for likely illicit discharge locations and continue to review and revise our enforcement procedures as needed. We're not anticipating any new updates to MCM number 4 with construction operations. I believe the construction permit is due for MPCA renewal here in a couple of years, so we'll wait for the changes that are expected with that permit revision, and we'll be updating ordinance and manuals as needed when those requirements are shared with us. MCM number 5, which we've already done, updated the stormwater manual and ordinance for the new requirements. And again, on number 6, update that snow and ice control policy and make sure we're complying with the educational requirements for pet waste. And we also will be working on our storm map to identify pollutant sources on the storm map, which is really the only facility we have would be the dog park, and have a bacteria control plan, which is providing resources for the pickup and removal of pet waste. So speaking of pet waste, that leads us into our scoop the poop slide. Main thing with this is if you're out walking your dog and that we're picking the pet waste up immediately. Animal waste is one of many small sources of pollution that drastically affect the water quality of our rivers that surround us, and which leads to even can impact human health. It contains many nutrients and pathogens that harm stormwater quality. And again, the easiest way to avoid that is to clean up each and every time after your pet does its business and dispose of it properly. We do ask that you do not throw pet waste into storm sewer drains, as that will go directly to the river or stormwater pond and directly affect that stormwater quality. So we ask you to take it with you and throw it into trash. Is the best place for that. So illicit discharge, we touched on this briefly, but illicit discharge is anything that drains to the storm sewer that is not rain or snow melt. We do have some exceptions that are included within the ordinance for residential car washing, firefighting, and natural groundwater. Sources can be anything from chemicals that are dumped into the storm drain or even into the curb and gutter on the roadway or even into your yard. That can leach its way into the storm sewer system as well. So proper disposal of any chemicals is key. If you have any leaky containers or anything, or bad hydraulic lines on equipment, it needs to be replaced before the pollutants land on the pervious surfaces and drain into the storm sewer system. And again, yard waste or pet waste. Yard waste, anything from grass clippings are considered illicit discharge. So we ask any time you mow that you're blowing the grass clippings back into your yard or bagging those. And if they do get into the street, that they're swept up or blown back into your yard. So why do we need to worry about illicit discharge? It's pollutants that go directly to the rivers without treatment. There are some areas where we have ponds prior, but we should not rely on those ponds for the illicit discharge treatment, because if those ponds become overrun with illicit discharges and pollutants, then we are required to clean them, and most likely that sediment that we dredge out of those ponds will need to be disposed of at the sanitary landfill, which is very costly. So how can we prevent illicit discharge? Is safely contain any household hazardous waste, keep lawn clippings and leaves off the roadways and sidewalks, and clean up after your pets. Those are the most common ones. If you suspect of illicit discharge, we ask either if you would, or if you're comfortable talking to the offender, and let them know of the city's stormwater ordinance and requirements. And you can always submit anonymous complaints to the city engineer's office. Those forms are available on the city website. So proper salt use. Why do we need to worry about salt for ice control? So 1 ounce of salt equals about 30 gallons of permanently polluted water. Once it hits in the waterway, we can't remove it very easily or cheaply. Pets' feet pads can become irritated, or they can become sick if they lick or consume salt. Small birds ingesting salt can lead to health problems or death. It can contaminate both the groundwater and surface water, which may leach into underground aquifers, which we draw our drinking water from. Some tips for salt usage: clear snow prior to the before it melts to prevent the formation of ice. If it's below 15 degrees Fahrenheit, the better option might be to use sand instead of salt. And keep in mind proper application rates when you're applying salt. 12 ounces of salt should be able to cover about 10 sidewalk panels, or roughly about 60 square feet. And if you have leftover salt or sand after the ice is melted, you can sweep that up and reuse it again as well. So at this time, I've reached the end of the presentation. We'll read any written comments and comments from the audience. We don't have any written comments that were submitted, and it does not appear that we have any comments from those in attendance. So with that, presentation is concluded. Again, if you do have questions on our stormwater program, I encourage you to reach out to the city engineer's office, 507-359-8380, or you can email me at joes@newulmmn.gov. Thank you.